Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, and we have Jen and the birds and John today first. That's great to see you. Hello.
Wonderful, John and Jen are here. Sinbad Lone Wolf. Breaking. We are all still broke bleep slaves with nothing. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. All the mysteries are being revealed, though. Oh, yeah, there's a lot being revealed. It's pretty wild out there, as is the norm during the apocalypse, right, guys? Oh, Regina.
Hi, Miss Regina. Good to see you. Hello there, Ray. Miss Xenomorphette. Hello, Robbie. Oh, goodness. It's great to see you, Keith. Miss Renee Matthews. Hello.
Yeah. So, good to see everybody. Keith, I think you ride motorcycles, right? I was remembering, I thought you had some sort of cruiser, or maybe that was just my mind going, being that I'm over 60, you know how it is.
I know. Ray says, we make great pets. I think about it. If you're a farmer, you always look at that one awkward pet out of the whole herd or flock or whatever. If you have a really wonky pet that just has such personality, do you not kind of favor them in some ways? I mean, is that how the gods see us? They look at us and say, yeah, I really like that one. They're a piece of work. Maybe they like that one because they are a treat and they have a lot of character, personality. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's how they see us. So that's really good. Hello there, Will. Good to see you. Oh, and there's KK.
Yeah, as I'm looking at a little pamphlet here, the plan of salvation that was delivered to us by two young Mormon boys knocking on the door. It was. We were going live, I think.
No, we were eating dinner.
Oh, we were eating dinner. That's what it was. So I couldn't talk to him, but I've had real fun times talking to people, whether they're Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, etc., coming to the door. I really do think that I think most people just want to do a good thing. They want to help people out. I think that's it at the core.
I know, they were the sweetest young men, and how brave were they to walk all the way up to our house with the dogs barking in the window the way they were, and and they knocked anyway, and they really they were operating from their heart, and you can just tell, and I really liked that. I enjoyed, talked with them for a minute, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, we're again way out in the country. It's not like one house right on top of the other, so you're going to do some walking if you're doing door knocking. And they did, and it was hot too. And it almost makes me want to go and maybe go take a visit to their mission. It's a mission. Yeah, it's interesting. There is some fascinating stuff in the Book of Mormon. I will tell you, there is interesting stuff in there.
There you can learn stuff from everyone, and that one. He was really interested because I was telling him I'm not the Bible guru. I'm just different. I just believe different things. But I said my husband now, he's different. He's a translator guru. And that's when this guy's ears perked up. He says, translations, really? I mean, he got really curious when he heard that Mike was doing translations from a young child. So his ears perked up. Maybe we will go have a visit with him.
Yeah, it's all about community. I feel that we are going to the point where we're going to have to, at some point in time, I think most of us are going to have to look to what's immediately around us, because I do expect there's going to be major disruptions, and we might lose our tech for a while.
And Music Board says, "Holy sheep dookie, I found you again." Yes, hit the sub button, and then maybe you'll find us again after that. It's great to see you here.
Karak Sue, great to see you as well. It's just fun when we take enjoyment in interacting with each other, which we do because here we are way out in the country. And really, who do we interact with? We interact with you guys. We don't see many people in person. We really, really don't. And it's wonderful to be able to do this and have this blessing of time spent with wonderful family members. You all. Look at this. Wow, that looks like a big noodle up in the sky.
It's like one of those, it's all it is probably just one of those really big, long balloons. And if you bend it just right, you can make a puppy dog out of it.
Yeah, it's like Cheech and Chong finding the heavenly doobie floating up in the sky.
Yeah, it's the heavenly doobie. I like that one.
Yeah, we don't partake. We don't look we do not look critically at anybody that partakes. But yeah, absolutely. We are sober beyond belief. And this is the way we act. Isn't that amazing? Oh, we showed you this like last week. And President Trump with what looks to be an alien, right? The fun part is this was tweeted by President Trump. So I thought this was out for a while, but he's retweeting it. So that's definitely fun and curious.
It is very fun and curious. It's very interesting. So I know it was out for a bit. So I don't know. I think he just really likes it. He favors it. Like he probably likes the picture. Makes him feel cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do use CBD. I do regularly use CBD because it helps so much with many things. I think it helps sleep. Absolutely. We have a cannabinoid diol system in our body. That tells you something. We've used it for countless generations.
Well, it definitely helps bring balance. The CBD. It took forever just to get some of this stuff even remotely legal. I am just so glad, looking at the world we live in and our death care system the way it is. I am so glad there is at least some plant medicine that's finally making it out so that people can get help and be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about being safe. Tornadoes out there, by the way. Thank you, Brother Keith. Motorcycle ride equals peace. It really does. Now, I think if I'm remembering it, why do I have a picture of you next to a big bike, like a Harley or something? I used to have a Honda Shadow 750. It was like 2006, I think. Great bike. I thought perfect size bike overall. But, I ended up parting ways and not riding for a long time. And then now I got an XR 150L. So, yeah, it's very small. It's not very fast. Turtles pass me, but it's okay because I like it. And, it's an on and off road, which I think is really cool. So I was just looking for something that give you super mileage, kind of emergency, backup transportation with the way gas is going. We're going to take a look at gas prices. But yeah, there's some insane tornadoes right now going down. Nebraska, west of Omaha. This is near Palmer. There's serious damage that has already happened. We don't really have a lot of reports yet, because it just really has been just happening. You could see some of the towns here, Dalton, Mayfield, Lenox, Hurley. I'm not too familiar with this area, but we do have family members up that way. Inch and a quarter hail, 80 plus mile an hour winds, Lincoln and Turner counties in Nebraska. My cousin is actually in Lincoln, Nebraska. And very thankful for Max Velocity. He's doing fabulous, and he is always right on top of things. Congratulations, Riley. It's one of his cohorts in crime there. Riley just graduated. So I believe Riley is now officially a meteorologist as well. I love to see the young kids doing well. They are our future, and I think Max has a great heart, and he does really, really well with what he does. Now, over here, pray for our people in Texas Panhandle. We've been through the Texas Panhandle so many times. We know that area really well. It really boggles my mind when you think about wildfires burning out of control, because there's really just not a lot of fuel. But we have, again, conditions with extreme drought. And yeah, there are a lot of cattle in this area. Really bad. And this is some of the worst fire conditions that locals have seen in some time. And we've had periods of real bad wildfires up through that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much crazy weather going on. The wildfires popping up, and especially the wildfires that go in a very straight line. I think when we start seeing that stuff, we need to watch out. But it feels very like merciless out there right now.
Yeah, so let's have more mercy on each other, and let's extend as many courtesies to each other as we possibly can, and support each other. This is in Russia. Ukraine unloaded a lot of, the way that warfare is conducted. Drones. It seems like drones and ballistic missiles are pretty much what's utilized primarily in warfare these days. That was a big strike into Russia. Actually, an Indian national was killed, and several other Indian nationals were injured in strikes on Russia. Ukraine, again, still ongoing. The war hasn't stopped, and, I guess the way some people think, the profits need to be coming in no matter what happens to people's lives. Ukraine carried out its biggest strike on Moscow since World War II here. Well, Ukraine in World War II was part of the Soviet Union, and so was Moscow, so was Russia. They were all part of the Soviet Union. If you didn't live in the times of the Soviet Union, it was the most massive empire on the map that we've really seen. It's very, very large. I guess technically maybe Genghis Khan's empire was a little bit larger, but again, the times change. The map is always changing. It never stays the same. That's because there's just nonstop wars until we come to our senses and really get rid of the politicians that lead us to these nonstop wars.
That would be nice. I just think that the world is going to have to turn upside down like the food pyramid before like anything really happens. I mean, everybody looked at the food pyramid and just treating it like, oh, they're the professionals, so we better just keep doing it. That's like the masses, that's what they kept doing. So until things got turned upside down, then maybe there's some change taking place. But unfortunately, we're going to have to take this snow globe and just turn it all the way upside down and just rattle the snot out of it. Maybe then something will change.
Yeah, Robbie's talking about Lyme disease and ticks. Both Cindy and I mean, just this year, what do we take? Maybe
5 off each of us at least.
Oh, more than that, yeah.
Dogs. I
mean, we're taking ticks off every day. Every day we're taking ticks off of either the dogs or ourselves. So, yeah, and there's so many different co-infections. Now, this was a late night blast and a fireball. This is in Israel. Now, rocket propellant firm Tomer says the large explosion was pre-planned experiment. Tests coordinated with authorities following panic. The company said it'll give the public warning in the future. Yeah, there's video here with the guys saying, oh, bleep, oh, bleep, oh, bleep. Because nobody knew this was coming, and they detonate something that looks like a small Nuke, and it freaks everybody out. They think, oh my gosh, did Iran just, nuke us? But supposedly, this was a controlled, planned explosion. Again, I don't trust anything they officially say. Things feel like they're going according to primarily what the Polish psychic has gotten. He said May would be a lull in the action, but June, the war would kick up to a much higher level. And he did say that it was going to be a very, very bumpy summer from the timeline that we are on at this point, because we could always, change timelines again.
Yeah, we can. Isn't that the beauty of the world that we live in? Being able to knowing that we can change the timelines. And how do we know that? I mean, just look back and look at the world we live in. And, you know, people keep talking about this split we're going to go through. And I got to say, I mean, think about how different our perceptions in reality can be. You can have one person see something in black and white and another person say, no, I saw it in blue and purple. Two different people seeing the same thing, having completely different views on what color a thing was. And then a lot of people heard the same thing from President Trump when he was talking about being a Christian. I forgot the exact words he was talking about, but so many people heard different things. I mean, looking at that right there, doesn't that tell you maybe we are in the split already?
Yeah, it's the perception. Yeah, I remember that totally very well. I heard him laughing and saying, I'm not a Christian. But other people heard him laughing and saying, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
It was like interesting. It was, yeah, they were very adamant. So it was pretty interesting to see. Meanwhile, more warnings. Trump has said to Iran basically on Sunday that the clock is ticking. Pakistani media talks have not only stalled, shown no signs of restarting. They better get moving faster. There won't be anything left of them. He wrote on Truth Social, time is of the essence. He spoke the same day with Netanyahu, who along with Lindsey Graham's been calling for a resumption of robust anti-Tehran action to ensure Iran can never go NUKE. In UKE, yes. Trump's words have been somewhat of a familiar refrain going back several weeks. Yeah, it's kind of like a broken record. So here you go. It's more threats and everything. But really what you can take from all this is the economic devastation that's hitting everybody. And it is hitting everybody. Also over here, the UAE nuclear power plant attacked as fire breaks out and Iran accused of unacceptable strike. Fire broke out in an electrical generator outside the Barak nuclear power plant in the Al Dhafra region of Abu Dhabi following a drone strike. So drone strikes on both sides again. Yeah, and hitting at nuclear power plants, that doesn't seem like that would be anything that anybody should do. Obviously, radiation, if it is what they tell us it is, again, I think there's people doubting everything now, which I think is a good thing, actually.
As they should. You should look at things once, look at them twice, look at them again, and especially if the information's not coming directly from you. And I was talking with those really nice young men, those Mormon young men. I was able to speak from experience, and they really believed in their book, and I think that's really good. They're on their journey, they're doing their thing, but I've lived long enough that I believe from my experience, and if I haven't directly experienced it, then I always leave a place in my heart to say, hey, if any new information comes, I can change my way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the same thing with me. It was I was exploring every single religion I could, get into any way, shape, or form. I mean, as a kid, I was literally going to Shabbats with friends, going to temple on Saturdays with friends. I actually grew up in a mostly Jewish neighborhood, and we were some of the only non-Jewish families there in reality. But it was interesting because I was brought up with that tradition right from the get-go, and we were Roman Catholic, but my mom would go to anywhere. She was not like so much a stickler, but she was used to the Catholic service, although it was extremely repetitive, I would say that.
Martine says, why would Iran attack Canada and not us?
Well, okay, you have to look into this. So what this is basically they're saying that there were people, there were Asians, there were sleeper cells, you could say, inside Canada that did the attack. Again, I think they hide a lot of stuff. They want this out there. For some reason, they want this much out there. Let's look at the article. Around allegedly behind Canada attacks on U.S. consulate and synagogue. Al-Saadi, working on behalf of the Islamic regime proxy, told an undercover law enforcement officer that his people were behind 2 attacks in Canada against a consulate and a synagogue. One of the allegations made in the criminal complaints against Kataib Hezbollah senior official Mohammad Bagher Saad Dawood al-Saadi, following the U.S. Department of Justice announcement of his arrest on Friday, was that Iranian proxies may have been behind at least 2 March shooting attacks in Toronto. In the complaint, Saadi, working on behalf of the Islamic regime proxy, told an undercover law enforcement officer that his people were behind 2 attacks in Canada against a consulate and a synagogue. The officer believed the consulate attack to be the March 10th shooting at the U.S. consulate in Toronto. No injuries were caused by the early morning shooting, Toronto Police Service said at that time, but damage was caused to the building. March saw 3 different shooting attacks in Toronto area synagogues. On March 2nd, after Purim celebrations ended, there was a shooting at the Temple Emmanuel synagogue, leaving multiple bullet holes in the synagogue's front windows. On March 6th, shots were fired at Beth Avram Yosef of Toronto, and March 7th at the Sharei Shomayim synagogue. 18-year-old man was charged with the latter 2 incidents on May 6, according to Toronto Police and York Regional Police. So TPS did not provide an immediate comment on whether Iranian involvement had been a line of inquiry prior to Friday. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that happen that are literally proxy attacks like this in many different locations. I think the key question is, why are they telling us about this right now here? Again, it's because of the person that was captured and the information that they're getting, because most of the times I don't think we really ever find out necessarily the public. The officials might know who's doing it, but they might not want to worry the public by saying, yes, this was literally a terrorist attack. I don't think they like to cause that type of stir a lot of times.
No, I don't think so either.
So I would think they'd want to downplay it so as not to cause public outcry. So as Hormuz, which literally, if you look at the maps from 1500s, they call the strait Hormuz. So just the H was missing. Interesting to see that the name hasn't changed in 500 years. So as that crisis rattles the world, eyes are on another key waterway. The Strait of Malacca carries more than a quarter of global trade, including most of the oil that flows from the Persian Gulf to key Asian markets. Yes, the war on Iran and this whole thing ongoing, who has it impacted the most when it comes to oil and gas prices and just availability? It hasn't been the U.S. because we are one of the bigger producers. It certainly has hit China more, and many experts will say that's kind of the intent, because all wars have some form of economic component to it.
Always an economic component to it. I think that's the war machine. That's how the controllers stay in control. They need hatred, they need anger, and when we are not putting that out, it's a concern, and they need to suppress anything that's putting out light and understanding and healing and teaching people that they don't need the death care system. They don't like that.
No, I like that phrasing, because it is a death care system when you really, really get down to it. So, yeah, what's going on now? It's like a war of attrition, but really who suffers? It's all of us, the average people. It doesn't matter to billionaires and even to multimillionaires so much. If gas goes up 20, 30, 50%, even 100%, it's nothing to a billionaire. Yet to many of us that are on a real fixed income or a budget, it's life or death. That's just the reality of it. It's always been this way.
Always.
Yeah. So again, the destruction of the middle class, my parents were very proud to think of themselves as middle class, albeit lower middle class. They never owned a home. Neither of them ever made more than $20,000. So we were basically always, my entire life growing up, it was paycheck to paycheck. So, again, we understand the value of a dollar, which again is nothing like it was when I was a kid even.
Robbie, thank you everyone. Everything you do. Mike and Cindy, we scheduled our first appointment 4 years ago today. After I watched a while on YouTube, that was one of the best decisions I ever made. Oh, Robbie, you are amazing. We can't wait for our session again tomorrow, too. It's going to be, they're always good ones. And it is such a blessing to have so many of you that we get to keep as regulars. And you do become part of the family. And when you do this work, it's impossible not to become attached to people, really connect with people. And that's cool. Thank you, Robbie.
Yeah, but when I look back, I think I was extremely blessed as a child because I had parents that never argue with each other. I've never saw either of them ever get really seriously angry at the other. They were kind of like, leave it to Beaver type perfect parents in that way. My father was the most patient man I've ever seen. And my mom was just a doll, a total sweetheart, very, very warm and loving. And, that's a blessing because it's not the case, and even for the last couple generations, it hasn't been the case. I think, again, a lot of people, when you're brought up in a home that's full of arguing and fighting and violence, that does so much damage to kids. And when you look at it, you start to understand that this is what the system is doing to us all. With the nonstop wars, it's a way to keep us traumatized. It's a way to keep us from being rooted and grounded, and being able to blossom and grow.
So all around us, we're being kind of mixed up in this chaotic frequency trauma soup. So it's very difficult to find peace and find your grounding. Even if you do choose to ignore the news and ignore everything else, you're still going to have moments when you feel other consciousnesses having a hard time. And, I'm sure many of you do feel that when a friend of yours or a family member, or even if something major happens, you feel this rock in your gut and you just know something is wrong, on the contrary, with Mike had a very quiet upbringing. I too had a very quiet upbringing, but my father had so much trauma. It's just my parents never fought or anything. They didn't talk. So I grew up in a different kind of traumatic realm, and I did pick up the chaos inside of my father, even though he never told me about his trauma. I found out about it much later. I grew up with it, and I felt it, and my life unfolded as if I were in a house full of trauma. It was just silent. So, frequency is truth. Frequency is truth, and that's kind of where we're at. We're in this chaotic frequency soup, and there's really no escaping. Even if you do want to ignore the news, there's still a frequency soup that we have to all get through.
Virginia was asking me if I had an Eddie Haskell type of friend. That was relating to the fictional character going back on Leave It to Beaver. I was really a loner, honestly, a huge loner, especially from third grade until out of sixth grade. In our school system, it was like grades 1 through 6, and then 7, 8 was a junior high, and then 9, 10, 11, and 12 was high school. But for me, like third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and sixth grade was traumatic because we were, again, we didn't fit in. So we were in a wealthy neighborhood, relatively speaking, but we were poor. I got picked on something fierce, and people did things like kids would come and kick at the fence at my dog and stuff, try to rile it up. I was like gang attacked by a group of kids constantly for years, and it just drove me inward. So, I was always by myself. As a young kid, I was constantly by myself, always.
It's bad. That's horrible, and that should happen to no one. But look what path it puts you on, though. It puts you on a path of health and wellness, introspection, and balance. But the way you take care of yourself and the way you have helped others take care of themselves, that speaks a lot. So even though some really horrible things do happen to us, the outcome, it's what do we do with that thing? How do we make that outcome to serve us, to serve us and to help other people? And with the way Mike has lived his life, I think he's maxed out, helped as many people as he possibly can, and he'll go to his grave helping as many people as he possibly can with whatever income or however we can. That's just in his nature.
It's how we react to things, how we choose to react to things, and then over here we see what they're building up. And Dabu was talking about this earlier today. You could see what they're building. USI's attack drone threat from Cuba. I'm not sure if the U.S. is going to get to attack Cuba and invade or try to take over Cuba, or if something will happen first that keeps them from doing just that. Or it could be that the U.S. does do it, and then that triggers a much bigger expansion in the war. Cuba has acquired more than 300 military drones and recently began discussing plans to use them to attack the U.S. base at Guantanamo Bay. Now, don't forget, the U.S. has that base on Cuban soil, Guantanamo Bay. The U.S. military is already in Cuba. It's been there, for a very, very long time. Guantanamo Bay, it goes all the way back to the Spanish-American War, which, one of my great uncles was in. Literally, I want to say, was that 1908? Somewhere around there. It was pre-World War I. That's when the United States took over Puerto Rico. Mario, thank you so much, Mario, for your support and your fellowship and your friendship.
Thank you so much, Mario.
Rosemary's in the house, and I saw Will's here and Diana. Great that you guys are all here. So yeah, it is a weird thing because obviously Russia and China have been very supportive of Cuba, and Cuba has been blockaded by the U.S., and the average citizens there don't even have oil now. So it's a blackout situation. They've gone back to the dark ages in Cuba. And to me, it's just horrible. And I don't really see any true reason for this, because this is so orchestrated in my mind. 90 miles from Florida, you have Cuba, which is like the same size as Florida pretty much. It's prime real estate on the earth, and it's a wonderful culture, and they've been so ostracized for so long, and they have suffered for so long, but yet they're so many of the people there are actually really happy, and they've just learned to live with less.
They do. Sometimes people, money can get people in trouble. Sometimes money can send people down the wrong road. Sometimes money can, get people involved with really bad things, and can actually, that could be their demise. So sometimes, if you don't have all the things that you need, there might be a reason for that. It's never pleasant, but I mean, sometimes people can be so poor, but they're so happy and content. And no matter how much money you have problems, and you have hurt, and maybe even bigger problems and bigger hurt.
Yeah, so this tells you where the mindset of at least those that are behind Trump and his regime, the mindset is to go into more of a isolationist, type of pose. Not really isolationist in the bigger scheme, but just basically meaning, like the Monroe Doctrine, the Western Hemisphere is ours. And what have we seen? We're going to touch on a couple of things, but I could touch on them now. We just had Trump and Xi Jinping meeting, and what do we take away from that? Well, again, there's this power struggle. China's on the rise. It's inevitable, so say the experts, that it will surpass the U.S. in influence and in money. And ultimately, that means in military capability. Ultimately, again, there's this factionalism. When we talk about there being really one government, there is a shadow government that controls everything, but there's different factions within that shadow government, which are all trying to be the top dog. Not that any of them really look out for us that much, because they really don't. They only look at us as a resource, all of them. They'll say otherwise, but that's true. Just look at their actions, right? CIA Director John Ratcliffe traveled to Cuba on Thursday and bluntly warned officials there against engaging in hostilities. He also urged them to scrap their totalitarian government to end the crippling U.S. sanctions, a CIA official told Axios. He made it clear Cuba can no longer serve as a platform for adversaries to advance hostile agendas in our hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere cannot be our adversaries' playground. So what they want to do, and it's interesting too, because right now it looks like the timeline we are on, according to the Polish psychic, Krzysztof Tchaikovsky, who is, again, very, very gifted and has worked with the police and other officials in looking for missing people and working on cold cases. This is something he does on a regular basis. With the timeline we're on right now, he sees the U.S. not as powerful, but isolated. And, basically, he sees this war going on through 2028 to the middle of 2028, and there being some sort of brokered truce. But we are not as powerful as we were even, last year, per se. And yet, here we are, we're going to be kind of focused on our immediate neighborhood. And you can see that's the way it's going. But obviously, Cuba, in that type of strategy, if you're looking at Monroe Doctrine, there cannot be Russia and Chinese influence in Cuba. So Cuba is obviously going to be it's going to be a necessity in the minds of the Trump regime, that we have to have Cuba. And so this makes perfect sense when he says, this is Trump, Taiwan loses its strategic importance in 18 months. Well, this is Chamath Palihapitiya. Again, this is part of the bigger picture here. President Trump said he doesn't want to travel 9,500 miles to fight a war over Taiwan. Some people were quick to point out that, literally, if you're looking at proximity to the United States, Taiwan's closer to the U.S. than Iran is. And there we are. We're in Iran, but we're not going to go all the way to fight Taiwan. So basically he's saying, they'll still make money on supplying arms to Taiwan because, the military-industrial complex has been centered in the U.S., if you didn't notice. But at the same time, they're basically saying, okay, you take Taiwan. But they're also saying we want Cuba. So this is where we're at. And we were going to send troops into Poland, which we now have, Pete Hegseth has supposedly changed his mind on. And you have Germany, basically saying we can't rely on the U.S. We have to do things ourselves. Germany and France, thinking about leading the way in a new military strategic European partnership. So honestly, when it comes to avoiding a huge World War III with catastrophic decline in global population, this might be the better way to go. The lesser of two evils. Again, nothing being really good, but just the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, the lesser of two evils. It's nice when there's at least an option. There is a bright side to everything. I just want to say a special thanks to everyone in the chat: Robbie, Jen and the birds, all of our folks in there, just being very kind and wonderful and keeping that vibration really high. And that's exactly what we need during times like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if Cuba was not being ostracized by the U.S. and was embraced maybe as a 52nd or 51st state, depending on who gets there first, or if the U.S. ends up breaking up into smaller groups before that happens, it's interesting because, again, I think timelines are all right up in the air. But yeah, if things were good, I could see us, maybe I could talk Cindy into getting a Cuban house. They're probably going to be on sale.
We'll see.
Here goes the we'll see. But anyway, it's interesting to see. This is what they're doing. Taiwan's going to lose its strategic importance in 18 months. Why? Because we're going to be able to build the chips ourselves that we get from Taiwan. That's what they're saying. So this is so clear. This is so clear what they're doing. It feels like this is like an offering of, okay, maybe we could divvy up the world three ways. Kind of that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a method to the madness, and it's really hard to say until it all plays out.
573-year-old temple in Japan, national treasure, goes up in flames. There's churches going up in flames all throughout Europe. Again, we were just talking about synagogues going up in flames, mosques, temples. Yeah, it's like it just seems like culture and history is always being obliterated. Do you think there's any chance that's just so it could be rewritten in a new direction, given a new history?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but why would they go for these monuments, these culturally significant, but certainly not necessarily economically important or militarily strategic? It is interesting. Again, it's like that's part of the bigger picture, keeping humans from rooting and grounding and growing. Okay, so this is the gas prices. The national AAA average right now is $4.51 a gallon. I saw us go back under 4. I think we were in the 390-ish area, but we are in the dark blue, so we're in the lowest priced area. Some places in the red there up to $6 or more a gallon. Gosh, that's brutal. But hey. It's all relative.
Yeah, it is, and I don't know. There's a reason for it. I mean, you look at the 2027 vehicles that are coming out, and I don't think anyone's going to want them because they have the kill switches on them, and I see all kinds of memes out there where people are making these reels, and someone just buys their new 2027 vehicle and they're all excited and they get in it, and then the vehicle catches on that they're excited and their heart rate is fast and they're not being their normal selves, so they can't drive the car. And then they say, well, I don't want this car. I want the manual. I want to override this. And they said, okay, well, we can put in a request, but it's going to take 5 to 7 business days for us to do the manual override. So, they're up to something. They want to definitely squash all the old vehicles that we have now. And what better way to do that than to make them impossible to drive or so expensive you just can't afford it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, it's making it difficult for the average person. That's what these wars do. 4 crew members ejected safely after 2 Navy jets crashed during an air show in Idaho. Been so many different, mishaps, aviation-wise. This was 2 U.S. Navy EA-18 Growlers from the Electronic Attack Squadron 129, Whidbey Island, Washington. The aircraft were performing aerial demonstration when the crash happened. 4 crew members from both jets safely ejected, crash is under investigation. The crew members are in stable condition. What went wrong? Was it maybe their AI system was off or something? I don't know. It's very curious. There's been way too many airplane problems.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of airplane problems, a lot of missing scientist problems. And there was just another scientist that's been missing, but they've been missing for years, but it's still along the same line. But they went missing, and then it took them a year to report them missing, same as the scientists that we have, connected with NASA, very extremely intelligent. And they were trying to make her out to be a total freak show, like she had a serious problem, emotional problem, and they just dismissed her intelligence completely, and they were talking about her personal life. But she's another one you can add to the list of missing scientists. And when they found her car, again, no keys, no phone, it looked like a boulder had hit both sides of her car. She was going out to go for a hike, and when they found her car, there was something hit it from behind and in front, and she was just missing. And it took them a year to report her missing. So now she has been added to the list of missing scientists.
2 presidential campaign staffers killed in Colombia as the election's near. Mexico, before Claudia Sheinbaum got in, there was like all these people that were candidates that were dying left and right. It's sad, but this is the case. This is the case that you see time and time again. You're a target. If you're in politics, you're a target. And again, the drug cartels are often a big part of this. But, they're working with certain governments around the world as a part that doesn't really get mentioned much, but it should be.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they do, and that's the bottom line. Now, a sitting congressman at a UAP briefing, being briefed on different types of aliens. Listen to this. This is an actual again, congressional briefing.
Whatever species have been piloting these craft, how are they large? Are they multiple species? What was their size? And how many are usually on?
So he's asking them, what about the species that are piloting these crafts? Are they large? What's their size, et cetera, et cetera?
They're typically the multiple species people are familiar with, the Greys, the Nordics. People were talking about reptilians and insectoids. It's not that they're reptilian or insectoid, it's that they resemble to the percipient of reptile or an insect type human, because they have this head and 4 limbs and torso.
So large, small?
Human size, human scale.
And how do you recruit?
Well, the Greys I'm familiar with from investigating the fashion corona, which is misnamed the fashion Roswell. It's not the fashion Roswell, it's the fashion corona in Mexico. Those were Greys, those were before time. And the Nordics are typically human size, actually 5-6 feet tall. The same with the people who mislabel reptilian insectoid, they're roughly that height too. I haven't heard anything about anything 7 or 8 feet.
What?
Right. So, just casually talking about different races of beings in the congressional report.
Just kind of casually.
Yeah, no big deal.
Pass the popcorn.
Exactly. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz was briefed that UFO programs are abducting humans from natural disasters, the migrant trade, and the Ukrainian war. The briefings I got made these allegations about how the humans for this program were harvested. It is natural disasters, sadly the unaccompanied minor crisis, and caravans that have unaccountable swaths of humans in South America coming across the border. And then they said the Ukraine war were having all these dead kids and adults running around. The allegation was that in places of great human peril, chaos, and no accountability, that's when humans were harvested. Think about that. Why do we have so many wars? It makes the perfect opportunity to just snatch a bunch of people. Well, they must have died in the bombing, or Yeah, well, there's not much left of that building, so, you're not going to be able to really collect the DNA and identify who is who. We know about so many people going missing in national parks, and that's an interesting thing. What's his name? David Pilates, right? Pilates. Missing 411. Yeah, great stuff. I mean, those type of shows always catch me, where it's, when some of these accounts of when people go missing, holy crap. I mean, it's like there's not a trace. There's just not a trace. There's even sometimes footsteps, and they just disappear. Like somehow they're beamed up, or literally beamed up. That's probably the best way to put it. They're snatched. Think about Katrina and Harvey. What really was the cost of those big hurricanes? Was it Maria down in Puerto Rico too? I think that was 2017. So much damage. And then I remember that because originally they were reporting in that Puerto Rican hurricane that there was like a very small amount of people dead. And then a year later they came out and it was like more than 10 times the number. Are a lot of the people being harvested by extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials?
Well, if the shoe fits.
It makes tons of sense. And this would also be another reason why they want us always having these wars, and chaos. It's just like, if we are not the top of the food chain, and listen to, again, the reports of what some of the, the people associated with the E-Man, their personal outings, their barbecues, let's just say, this all makes perfect sense.
I can't say that I could see it any other way. It's one of those things that you just can't unsee when you have some of these realizations, and then all the mass fires, and then then all of a sudden there's all these people just go missing, and there's no accountability, and it's just pure chaos, and how many massive wildfires that had so many people go missing have we had? I mean, so many. And then even look at the old world, where so many cities were being burned down. Imagine all those people that were in the cities. That must have been quite a harvest. And speaking of the word harvest, is that kind of what we're waiting for? Is that the harvest we're waiting for? We're waiting for a big chaotic attack, and then we'll be harvested.
Yeah, is the Great Reset literally that? It's a great harvest, and that's the thing that always freaked us out when the wording of, again, the raw material, the channelings, when they talk about the harvest, it always felt to me that, it was kind of an ominous term. But you have that with the wheat and the chaff, the biblical term, and harvest. Harvest. Yeah. Corn, when it's harvested, it ultimately ends up in somebody's belly.
It sure does.
Yeah. And then you have all these reports about CERN communicating with entities from the other side. What could they want? Well, again, if there's entities that have all sorts of technology and information, that could lead to more power, control, wealth, etc. You know how it works. There's a lot of people talking about entities coming through portals at CERN. We've gotten that, absolutely. CERN is exactly that. Yet there's other technology out there that dwarfs CERN. So even, as mind-blowing as it is, there's definitely other beings that are more powerful than this food chain. Yeah, absolutely. It's very demonic. You could just see, again, from all the different, plays and dramas that they act out, their rituals, they're so dark. That whole ritual that happened way back, was it the 2011 Super Bowl, that seemed to be talking about the plague upon the land exactly, an angel of death coming out and little kids in cribs. It was just so freaking creepy. Why would you? Oh yeah, and the one with the tunnel. That was with the opening of the bridge down by CERN. So a lot of people are talking about certain beings coming through. And then we got Stranger Things. You know, it really is a documentary. This is very true. So when we think about the demonic entities, they're very real. But that doesn't mean that there's no extraterrestrials. No, I think what we've labeled demons often are extraterrestrials. And this is Conway, Arkansas. People are being told to sit down, shut up, and stop asking questions about the new data center coming to town. The developer is Forge Light Ventures, acting on behalf of a secret Fortune 100 company. They don't even know who it is. They want to keep it silent. You know, Fender Guitar Company just basically opened up a lawsuit against everybody that makes a Strat-like guitar in Europe. And they're trying to get everybody that's ever made a guitar that has the Stratocaster body shape, you know, one of their patented body shapes. They're trying to knock them straight out of business by suing all these tiny small companies. One of them only has 12 people on the corporate payroll. I think it's going to backfire. It's going to bite them in the butt because people are not going to go for that type of monopoly. Well, this is also going to bite these companies in the butt because, again, we need to hit them where it counts and stop supporting them in any way we can. All the companies that are pushing these agendas.
All we can do is our best and keep pushing.
It's kind of hard when the very mechanism we're using right now is one of those companies. Yeah, so it's kind of tough when they're the ones that hold all the technology cards. Look at this amazing catch in Germany. What do you make of this spectacular light show? Yeah, they're just wondering, what the heck is that? We've had multiple emails come through saying that it's from different people trying to get us to click on a link. Some of them were like saying that, you used one of our videos and stuff and, you have to remove it. But then I asked them which video, what date, where was it? Was it on which venue? YouTube, Rumble, Brighty, and BitChute. Again, they just say, click the link, click the link. They're obviously trying to get us with some malware. And then we just had them send email saying, oh, you were selected by Mr. Beast on YouTube to be one of the channels that's going to be in something that he's doing, but I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it. And I could feel the energy behind it is the same. So this is where we use, what do we sense energetic wise? To sense that's our marker. That's how we feel into something. And the energy feels the same from some of the supposed companies representing people that, supposedly some of these different videos there are theirs and they don't want it being shown, but they won't tell you what video, what day, what time, because if something happens, YouTube will tell you, at 16 minutes and 11 seconds, of this video, there's a clip in there that won't allow you to monetize it or to use it in certain countries, things like that. That's how they notify you. But this was just out of the blue. It just feels like targeting, but we're used to being targeted. It's been the whole time we've been up.
Yeah, it's just not nice. They wouldn't answer anything. They just kept saying, well, just click the link. That'll tell you everything. No, we're not going to do that.
UFO investigator says Congress is now seeing footage so disturbing that lawmakers were shaking after watching it. Shaking. Wow. Well, they didn't tell us exactly what it was, But this one is supposedly legit. It does have a very authentic feel to it. There are some, again, I think there's an awful lot of AI slop and etc. But I think a lot of that's done just to discredit the legitimate ones.
I think so too. It's just to really muddy the waters so we don't know what's what.
Yeah, absolutely. Star Wars going on. At first, we looked at this and we said, okay, now we're not going to show it. But supposedly, this was over Israel. And so, there's lights that look to be very unusual and weird. It looks like it could be AI generated. But then just saying that there's shooting going on, like trying to hit it. This just looks like it's been moved up to a faster speed. But, again, we've had reports of Foo Fighters going back to World War II. We got reports going back to ancient Rome and ancient Greece. There was, again, going back to speaking about Alexander the Great in his conquest when he was over going through Persia and heading towards India. They had a major sighting themselves up in the sky over the battlefield. So, this is ongoing. We've always been watched. Maybe they were waiting for a harvest, and they knew the battlefield was a harvest, They're licking their chops, This is really, it's horrible to say, but, we know that vultures, different birds will gather and feed on the corpses, and this is a really curious, unusual one there. I don't know what to make of this one, if it's maybe just another fake, but it looks like a little dice. It looks like, doesn't it look like a dice, a die? And then, I don't know, a little robot, little transformer up in the air, or a little AI magic?
Yeah, I mean, it has some really weird looking energy to it, like plasma type, very thick plasma type energy to it.
Maybe that's part of the magnetic anti-gravity field.
Yeah, could be.
Could be. Yeah, it's fascinating where we are. It's 2026 and they're really giving us disclosure, but of course, it's going to always be a disclosure with a twist. So here's another metallic one, sitting on the beach, just, enjoying the waves and the weather, and then you look up and, honey, what's that?
Yeah, what is that?
And then when it goes straight down into the ocean, that makes it even more interesting. Because, again, there are some out there, there's some psychics out there that say that one of the first real encounters that we're going to have where we actually get to see some of these beings are going to be beings that live in the sea. And it's not SpongeBob.
No, although I really did enjoy SpongeBob.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, pretty wild. This is really fun watching all these things. Zooming in on the moon and you see these ships out there coming and going.
Yeah, I mean, what could that possibly be? That thing just, hanging out right there above the moon. In fact, Mike just did a remote viewing on the moon, and it was really not what we currently think. No,
the moon, again. Yeah, there's a reason why it resembles the Death Star when you look up at it. And here you have shocking images. This is New York, blazing sun. Hudson River, I believe. This was a real clear one. Perfect saucer. Yep. Looking at going buzzing. Looks like it's below the helicopter. Hard to tell. And of course, everything now is messed up even more because we have so many drones. When you look at this, and when you look like to New Mexico, Utah, Arizona too, and you see these areas where people might have been 100 feet down a cliff, but still like 200 or 300 feet up a cliff on a ledge, and they're making little places to store corn and things like that, and to even live and, again, provide shelter in such precarious areas. Why? Why? It's just, you could just simply say, well, they're at war with other tribes. That's what they're afraid of, so they're trying to hide out. I get the feeling that they're afraid of something that's not human. That's the feeling that I get.
Maybe they saw their friends harvested during a chaotic time and they're just not going to have it.
Think about that. If you did actually see that, like go back to, I don't know, when some of these are 1,000 years old. A lot of them are about 500 years old. So 1500, 1400s, 1000 AD. You are living, there in New Mexico and what have you, and then you witness technology like, a UFO go by. Maybe you witness beings come out. Maybe you witness a ship literally beam up a cow or beam up somebody Maybe they beam up a whole tribe. Maybe they literally abduct a whole tribe. What would you do? I mean, you would freak out and probably look to find the most out-of-the-way place that would be very difficult to get to, and that's what you got with these places.
It does seem like that they're living there out of a state of trauma. I mean, it's not like they just waltzed up there and decided, oh, let's make this our home. No, that decision was made out of trauma. I mean, just personally, that's what I think.
I agree. And that's what we felt, because when we were living in New Mexico, we had one of these not too far away. And we would go by it every day. We would go for a walk. And one of the best hiking areas we've been able to go to. This was in Rama, New Mexico, and it always hit me that these people were terrified of somebody or something, and this is why they're living in these really hard to get to areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a normal decision your everyday Joe would make.
Yeah, KK is talking about Bruce Sees All, his untimely death. How about, Desert Drifter, his untimely death. How about Gerald Clark, his untimely death. There's a lot of YouTubers. Wilcox, his untimely death. You get the picture? Every one of them was asking the same questions that we ask every day, too. And look at these cuties.
Isn't that cute? Look at that little guy. He's flying. He's going to do it. And that's just, I've never seen a baby hummingbird. How sweet.
Yeah, he's going to get a little air. He's got it. Yes, I can do it. I can do it. I think I can.
He's doing it. Oh my gosh. And look, they're just on the tip of someone's finger. They are so small. I mean, he must be really friendly with those birds. They must be very good friends to be, unless it's AI. AI takes a lot of the magic out of stuff.
This feels real. Yeah. I do think it's real. It's cute. When I go and let the chickens out in the morning and everything, it's just, the greeting is so much fun. They just come like so happily out and go bounding about through the run. It's just wonderful. As we've said before, it's like for them, I wonder if they really think of us as mom and dad, even though we don't have wings.
I know. I think they do. They're very inquisitive, and their personalities are really starting to show up, and it's a lot of fun. You can see the timid ones, you can see the bold ones, you can see the ones that just aren't sure, and they're just a lot of fun.
Yeah, Kay says, my family is from the Roswell area, and they pass down stories. Ooh, wow. I'd love to hear those, absolutely. Sent Havoc, Northern Kemet. Yeah, there's so much mystery there in the Grand Canyon area. There's a reason why there's a whole bunch of it been blocked off. Nobody's been able to go there. Again, lots and lots of rumors. Yeah, hummingbirds are just amazing. So Cindy's going to give us some dings, and we want to wish Loka Samasta, Suki no Bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may my words, thoughts, acts, and deeds contribute to that happiness and freedom for all. Again, we can only control ourselves, and like our first video this morning, Evolutionary Energy Arts, the original channel, I said, do you think I was too harsh? Because I was, asking, what are you going to do to, again, stop what's happening? We need to think of it in that sense. What am I going to do? For us, we do these videos and we try to wake up as many people as possible. We do talk to people, in person sometimes, and it feels like, people are way more awake now than they were, say, back in 2020.
Yeah, and we try to help people know that there is a different way than, the mainstream medicine. We're definitely not doctors. We have not been indoctrinated at all, but there are other ways. And, in my journey, I wish someone would have told me a few other things that I could have tried, because I really went down the wrong path for a lot of years, and it cost me, and it still costs me today. So we do our best to help people, and you guys, you're doing what you do by coming here every day, hitting the thumbs up and supporting us the way you do, and we really appreciate it. I want to say huge thank yous to Mario, Robbie, and Keith. So here's some dings. You all are amazing. Source bless and namaste.
Much love and gratitude, guys. Source bless. Namaste.